Welcome back to the Gufs Circa 2020 podcast. Tonight we are covering the Gufs' first Atlantic release, the Gufs. Tonight we are joined by Goran and Dejan. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
That was a warm welcome.
It's good to be back.
Well, after that stellar start, let's dig right in. So, to give a little recap of where we're at, we've gone through Staring into the Sun, we've gone through Songs of Life, gone through Circa 89, gone through Collide, and now we are on to signing a record contract and releasing your first major album. I mean, major, I hope I'm not overstepping because those were spectacular albums before. So, but now we have a little bit of steam behind what we're doing. So let's start with where we left off, I think, a little bit a while ago. The concert that you put on for the Atlantic executive that came to see and how Life Sweet Sounds was one of the songs that I guess you had to perform. So kind of bring us up to speed here on what happened then. Goran?
I was doing a dramatic pause so Dejan could take over. Because I was mostly high during the mid to late 90s, so I don't remember much of anything. That's why I'm lyrically challenged.
That's a good explanation.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dejan, to you. You paint us the picture.
Well, I'm going to be candid. I kind of remember when Nick Casanelli came out to the Chicago show, but the one that you're referencing is when after Nick came to see us, went back to New York, and then he brought out Craig Coleman, who was he like the head of A&R at Atlantic, Goran?
Yeah, he might have been even like a VP at the time. Like he was climbing the ladder. I think he's the president now.
Yeah, so I think, so 94, 95. It was actually 95, yeah. So in 95, he brought Craig Coleman out we did a event, I think it was called Rainbow Summer. And it was at the little outdoor amphitheater right around by the Paps. I can't remember exactly what street it was on, but it was right there. And I can't remember if that was the first time we did it or not. We were doing a lot of outdoor, festivals throughout Milwaukee and Wisconsin at the time. But it was a very cool event, and it was, just a packed event. And he got to see, a full show, full headlining show where we covered material, everything from, Staring into the Sun, Circa 89. We just released Collide the year previously in 94. And so, and at that point when he came out, we were getting a lot of traction on WLUM, and a couple other stations started to pay a little bit of attention to us as far as, the bigger modern rock, not the college stations, but the bigger rock stations were paying attention to us. So Laser and WLUM. And so we had a lot of interest and a lot of steam, I think, going by the time Craig and Nick Casanelli came out to that Rainbow Summer show. But we met Nick, I can't remember how much earlier. I think Goran has a little bit better memory of when Nick came to see us in Chicago.
I don't think it was that much like sooner. I think the timing was where we were playing a show in Chicago. It was our first time. I don't remember the place, but it was a really small club. And we were like, no, come out in the next couple of weeks and see us in our hometown. And Nick, like I might have mentioned on one of the other episodes, he just wanted to make sure that we were a band and we can plug our instruments in and that we can actually play in time and I can actually sing. So it was funny because it wasn't a big show at the Chicago show, but he was all smiles. He just wanted to make sure that we were legit. And I think just a few weeks later, the amphitheater show happened, and it was huge. Like we were on top of the world at that time because we were killing it in Milwaukee with all the radio play and the fans. I remember playing that show, and I mean the crowd was deep as all get up. It was, if I remember correctly, the amphitheater might hold, I don't know, a handful of 100, and then the whole behind the amphitheater just standing room. So to be able to impress a higher up from Atlantic like that. And I just remember he was sitting by the soundboard the whole time and just smiling and just like looking around and watching what everybody was doing. And when we played Life Sweet Sound at that time was just a huge song for us. It wasn't a radio song, but it was one of our big older tunes, and the entire crowd just starts singing the chorus, and he dug the song and he saw what the song was doing to the audience. So he said, "You guys got to record that song. That's got to be on this record if we're going to do this thing." So that was kind of his wish, and
So-
the rest is kind of history.
So explain to us mere mortals how this works. So as you're moving along, you're making CDs, you're putting stuff out. I mean, how does the transition go from being a solid regional Milwaukee band to getting national attention? I mean, how does this happen? What were the challenges? Were there things that you did to kind of advance your careers? I mean, for most of us, we think you write a good song, it gets on the radio, but that's not the case. So when you look back at what it took to go from, playing Milwaukee shows, playing from the Unicorn to the Shank to what was the major transition and the major mindset between, the four of you that helped kind of spur this to happen?
Well, I think, and this is something that we've talked about, and I think you'll see it's like a common theme throughout all these episodes, is that we built things up incrementally, and in terms of just from the venues we were playing, over time got bigger and bigger. From the geographical area that we were playing, we spread out from Milwaukee through Wisconsin into Illinois, then into the Midwest. And by the time that Atlantic came knocking, we already had a really solid Midwestern presence. We're playing, capacity shows in Minneapolis. We're doing big shows in Grand Rapids. We used to play this place out in Columbus, Ohio called Ludlow's, which was just this gigantic bar that once we started playing there, we're getting invited back every 6 weeks. And so for us, we were already transitioning from like a hyper local Milwaukee, Chicago, Minneapolis band, and we're now playing in Iowa, we're playing out in South Dakota, we're playing just starting to get into other parts of Michigan and Indiana and Ohio. So we're slowly growing incrementally. And then for us, when Atlanta came knocking, it just seemed like the logical next step, because it's really difficult. You build up as a regional act that took us, 4 years to build up to that point. If Atlantic wasn't there, we would have probably continued to slowly expand out of the Midwest into, other parts that we could access easily, like the Southeast or the Northeast, and start touring in those areas. But that takes time. So the thing with Atlantic, it just helped us to sort of, once we got in bed with them, then it just sort of expanded, quicker to a certain extent. We had a larger geographical coverage, but we just didn't have the crowd to back us up when we were going elsewhere. And I don't know, I think at the time we always talked about, we just were having fun and writing music, enjoying playing shows, and it grew naturally. We never said from day one, like, hey, we're going to put out albums and we're going to get signed and we're going to tour all over the place. We never had any big aspirations of being big rockers or doing this for 30 years. I think most of us thought, hey, let's do this while we're in college. It'll be fun. We're all going and getting our education and we'll see where it goes. And it took us to a place that none of us, I really think, anticipated, none of us expected, and was a bit of a surprise to all of us.
And it was all timing and luck. If we were, 10 years later, we might still be doing this more intensely, because we come from the age where, we had carrier pigeons. That's how we had to get our, that's how we had to get our merchandise and CDs to everybody. No, but honestly,
they were very muscular pigeons to carry all that weight.
I remember getting a cell phone in the mid 90s. Like, it was like, I was like, this thing's cool.
It was a brick.
Yeah. But back in the day, we were doing.
I've got it right here.
Back in the day, we were doing mailing list was huge. Like, we would always at the end of the show go, how many people signed up on the mailing list? And we were doing, I don't know if you ever got one of those, but we were sending out merch letters and thank you letters to
postcards, flyers,
and sending stuff, in and out from the mail. And so, we were kind of timing, luck. It was great that we got a song on the radio because that's really what got us signed. And that's what blew up Milwaukee, that then allowed it to just kind of keep on growing. But if we would have, been 10 years later, we would have had a little bit more technology that could have helped build the story and kind of push the story. And nowadays, I mean, nobody's touring. You can do everything from home and you can record everything from home. And, back in the day, you had to get in the van, you had to drive, and you had to go from show to show and get as many people on the mailing list so you can kind of keep in touch. And every time you went back, the shows just got bigger and bigger.
And we're going to come back to the van. I know this is something you texted me about last time. We'll come back to that later. But let's talk about first recording from Collide to, the Atlantic release. So you recorded Collide at Smart Studios in Madison. When you had to, record for Atlantic, there was obviously some change in songs on the album. Were those recorded still at Smart, or did you go somewhere else? Did Atlantic kind of dictate that whole situation? And second part of the question, what was the deciding factor to leave some of the older songs off and rewrite some new songs that were featured on this new album?
I think we wanted to rock. We wanted to get away from some of the softer stuff that was on the record. And then we wanted to respect, Craig's wishes, and we recorded Life Sweet Sound. And that's another song that, just like Listen to the Trees, we just never got it right. Like, that song's an interesting song to play and record, and certain songs are just better left live. But I think we were just trying to be thematically a little bit more consistent with the Atlantic release.
And also at that time it was, we released Collide in 94. And at that point when Atlantic came knocking, we've already spent, 8-9 months with the album. And at the time we were constantly writing. And so we had a handful of new songs that felt a little bit edgier, a little bit more, contemporary at the time. Like, Sunday Driver and something. That's something we wrote after Collide came out. And then we were on, I can't remember where we were at, but when we wrote that song, I think we sort of came up with that song like just in a jam somewhere, just grooving a little bit drums and bass, and then we threw it together. So by the time Atlantic said, hey, we would like you to record this song and we want to re-release this album, we're like, well, we've got a handful of new songs we'd like to put on there that we think is a little bit better representation of who we are as a band and where we're at right now. So,
and they were cool, they let us do it.
Well, no, I asked because I think there were some fan favorites that were left off, and people want to hear, the decision that was made. I mean, you had Belong, Emily, which Belong was a kind of a huge, live song at the time. That you had the two, everyone putting the two fingers in the air, and you throw back to those days of Sheboygan Fest and whatever else they had going on. But no, that was why I asked. And there's another question that actually came from when you said Listen to the Trees, that came from one of these posts off of Facebook. Was the question is it's kind of sincere, and I kind of liked it. It said, did you ever have to pay any sort of royalties to the police for using walking in your footsteps in Listen to the Trees? It seems like an honest question.
Live, you can do whatever you want, but
Right.
We never put that on the recording. So if we put it on the recording, then I don't think we ever put the walking in your footsteps part on.
How'd you make the transition into that song? I mean, it fits very well, but how did you ever come up with that idea? I mean, there's a lot of songs that you transition with.
It's probably me being goofy.
Half the time he's trying to make us laugh, and so we'll be playing something live, and we're just grooving, and all of a sudden, I think the first time he sings that, you hear "Walking Your Footsteps," and all three of us like look at each other like, "What the hell did he just do?" And we're like, "That's actually really cool." So, hey, yeah, half the time it's just Goran being Goran.
I remember when we were sound checking for the Gufs 30 or what it was on the New Year's show, but we were doing Someone Like You, and I changed just for sound check, and I changed the melody completely, and I actually pulled off a really cool Chris Cornell. So I just try to keep it fresh, and then every once in a while it works and sticks, and that actually the walking in your footsteps kind of worked.
Well, it's a pretty well-known song, a well-known transition, I think, in any show that you've had, and something that we look forward to every time we see the Gufs. And we've just kind of always wondered how it came about. So now we know that it was that was literally made during a sound check or live transition, correct?
Yeah, I mean, just by accident, and then we realized that it could work, and then we're like, okay, how do we fit that into the song? And then I think we did some of the actual loops from the Police that we do live, but we couldn't do that stuff on a record. If we did it on a record, then we would have to pay them, and then they would probably end up being songwriters on it, which would be cool.
Well, you got Sting. I mean, co-written by Sting. I mean,
that's cool. I don't know if you care, but we think it would be pretty cool.
he may show up sometime else and like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, Sting.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Hey. We'd have to disturb him from his like kind of
6 hour
his tantric session.
Yeah, totally. Like,
from his 14-hour ongoing orgasms.
He's like, I'm on day 3 of almost climaxing. He's like, I'm on day 3 of almost climaxing.
Hey, why don't we do this one?
You know what? You want to know why we can never tour in England?
Yes, good story. Yeah.
Because the guff or a guff is slang in English for flatulence.
I think it's one of the more subtle and less recognized forms of quietly passing gas.
So it's a whole show of farts, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So could you imagine the Gufs as serious as we were in Moody if we came like off of holiday from you to like London and we sold out like Wembley and everybody.
You're playing the new Farm Aid show or Live Aid, whatever Queen was on.
Gordy.
Everybody had like a low end microphone behind Dejan. So every once in a while, it's like, we can edit that out, right? All the stuff.
Yeah, we're
like an episode of South Park.
Mental note: we're at minute 21:00. We're gonna edit this shit out. Oh man.
Nope. Well,
decades of embarrassment, man.
Well, back to a serious stuff.
That's true about the Gufs.
No, I don't doubt you. I mean,
well, it's a fart. I think it's slang for a fart, so we could never go there.
And thus our number 1 record in the UK crashed before it was ever released.
Hey, speaking of foreign countries, so we put some of these episodes out on Spotify for audio, and you guys have two fans in Russia apparently. So there were 2 downloads in Russia. So right now,
cool.
This podcast, I think that makes it like number 1 in all of Russia because I didn't even know they had podcasts there. So hey, congratulations on that, right?
Hey man, I think it's Puti. Puti is our friend.
Well, when I saw that, I initially went to the old Saturday Night Live skits with Steve Martin and Dan Aykroyd, where we're 2 wild and crazy guys. I'm like, it's got to be them, right?
I think they were Czechoslovakian, so I'm not sure, but we got fans all over, man. We got some Czechs, some Balkans. I knew for a time it was like we actually had a decent little following in Germany. We never made it there, but we're getting some love from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs love from Germany.
In Germany, Guff means you don't want to know. So we could never we couldn't make it to much of Europe because of that.
Well, we are having a translation special, so please share.
I think the official word was Gufenstrafenloten.
Which we can't tell you what that means because behind the scenes there's a lady that's operating the EQ and all the levels, so we want to be respectful. But Goofen Schlappenhamen. Just look it up. It's bad. Okay.
Oh boy.
I don't know about you, Gordy, but right now I can feel Scott Schwabel shaking his head, going, "Oh fuck, these guys."
That's why we have editing.
And that's what you get for not joining the podcast, Scoob.
Exactly. I was just going to say that's why you should be here.
Put down the coffee and join the cast.
So, so we've covered how the Gufs is translated in many different countries. So, but at this time, you're signed with Atlantic. Who are you touring with at this time? So, Pet Engine was obviously one that we talked about previously.
Who?
Pet Engine? Do you know them?
I'm not sure.
They're another local Milwaukee band. Verve Pipe, Freddie Jones,
Right, that's right.
things that we talked about. But as you're picking up, obviously you got to probably jump on a different tour now that you're an Atlantic sign artist. So how are things as far as the tour wise going at this point?
The whole key with touring at that point is you're kind of piggybacking with other bands that are doing the same thing in their respective hometowns. So I remember trading shows with Verve Pipe. I remember trading shows with Stir out of St. Louis. Freddie Jones Band out of Chicago. So that was the key. And then, you go to their hometown, they go to yours, and you kind of, you hope that you get all those names on the mailing list and you can kind of eventually go there on your own.
Yeah, we used to play a lot with Freddie Jones Band. They were, at the time, they had they're a really big college band. So I remember playing, like St. Norbert's with them at one point and a handful of other places. So we ended up playing, a dozen or more shows with them over the years. And they were always super cool guys and always had a really great crowd. And it was always well received. So that was our first real, outside of trading shows like Goran said, one for one with bands in their hometowns or in their backyards. Freddie was like the first band that actually took us to, and we played some really, nice venues and did a string of shows with those guys. So that was always cool.
Was that still when Marty was around? Marty was still with Freddie Jones?
Yeah, Marty was still in the band, yeah.
I actually met those two, actually the whole band, actually at the St. Norbert show at a gas station outside of Green Bay. And so we pull up, and a buddy of mine, I didn't know much about Freddie Jones at the time. And of course, he's got his CD and he runs over, gets it signed. And I mean, they seem like pretty decent guys. It's kind of funny. So I become much more of a Freddie Jones band at the time. So it's kind of cool to hear the connection between, the two bands. So,
yeah, it was fun. It was a lot. We played a lot of fun shows with those guys. And those guys were always just, I mean, musicians, they were just,
they were monsters.
Like, they were monsters. Gordy and I were just talking about this yesterday. It's like, we're good musicians. We're better songwriters. But we've played with like some people. Goran was showing me a video on Instagram yesterday. I told him, I go, hey man, I don't need to feel mediocre anymore than watching these guys. But like playing with those guys, you'd sit there in awe, and like they would just be jamming and riffing, and you're like, man, I wish I could play like that. So they were awesome band. They were really cool too, because I think they've spent a lot more years on the road and traveling more, and we definitely learned a lot from them, in terms of stepping up our game and putting on a good show.
And when we got signed, one of the biggest benefits of being signed is now all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a machine behind you, and now all of a sudden those one-off shows or couple shows, and you're just trading with bands that are doing well. Now you're getting ready to go on tour, and you got a song on the radio that's doing pretty good. And I remember our first big tour where we were like, holy cow, this is amazing, was we got on tour with Jars of Clay and the Samples, and it was the best thing that ever happened to us as far as growing our crowd. Jars of Clay, their crowd loved us. It was interesting because there was a little bit of a rub during that whole tour, and it was like 30, 40, 50 shows. Like we were doing it for months.
But yeah.
And the rub was a little bit that it was a co-headline between Jars of Clay and Samples, and Jars of Clay crowd is a Christian-based crowd, and the Samples crowd is a little bit different. It's a
Pot smoking
spiritual-
hippies.
yeah, totally. So it was a little bit of a rub, and we ended up being the darlings of the tour. And I remember when the Samples ended up getting off the tour, Matchbox 20 jumped on the tour, and that was Matchbox. That was their first real big tour. So it was Matchbox opening for us, and we got put into the middle slot, and then Jars of Clay closing it. And every show was decked out, like stage and lights, and you'd go backstage and the food spread. It's time for dinner. Like every show was just absolutely decked out, and we're like, holy cow, this is way different than whatever we're used to. $10 and go down the street and get a burrito. But burritos are good. I got no complaints about a good burrito. But when you're getting like served up by chefs every night, it was just super crazy. And that's how we got really chummy with Rob and the boys.
So what type of venues on that tour? What type of venues are you playing at?
A lot of colleges, like
Yeah.
like the,
Amphitheater, gymnasiums. They would put up a huge stage.
Yeah. Stages.
So, and it was all.
Yeah. It was big sound systems. It was like being a young band and having a song on the radio, and being able to walk on stage every night. And their crowd was amazing. They were, every night was a handful of thousands of people.
So there has to be change in your mentality at that point. I mean, you're obviously playing, Milwaukee, you're playing very heavy. I mean, you have a solid crowd. So, but when you step up to, gymnasiums, amphitheaters, things like that, there has to be a change in your show, a change in your presence. So talk a little bit about how moving from playing the Unicorn or Shank Hall to now playing in front of thousands of people, and you've got, quality, real solid quality bands surrounding you. I mean, there has to be a change in kind of how you do things.
Yeah, like Dan said, we didn't plan on any of this happening. Dan and I played music in high school, and we'd play Battle of the Bands, and we'd win Battle of the Bands. So all of a sudden we're like, oh, people must think we're pretty good. And that turns into going to Milwaukee and being inspired by local Milwaukee music, starting a band. And, so we didn't plan on any of this. We all went to college. I went and got a doctorate, after that. And then all of a sudden you get signed and people start taking you seriously. And it's a great question, because we really grew into wanting to be great. We wanted to be rock stars. We wanted to fit and play the role that was all of a sudden being written for us. So we grew into it. And I hope we weren't jerks, although we probably were. But we always loved our fans. We'd stay until every single fan got a picture, got their CD signed, got talked to. We loved that. But we were definitely growing into walking on stage with a little bit of an attitude and a chip on our shoulder, and wanting to really rock and be great.
I think it's also part of the process of, when we started, if you think about it, I was 17 when we played our first shows, and then in 1988, and now here we are in 1995 and 96 playing all these out on tour, with the Jars and Samples, and then with Matchbox. And I think we progressively, each step along the way with each album, our songwriting got better. We started to take it more seriously. We became better at our craft. I think anybody in any skill set or in any artistic form, it's like what you drew 20 years ago versus what you're painting now. There's a world of difference. And even now, the songs that Goran and I are writing now, we look at the evolution of things. So we slowly evolved and started taking things more seriously, because it demanded us to take things more seriously, because it was growing into something we never anticipated. And then I think when we got on these tours and we're watching these other bands, you're realizing that people are paying money to be entertained and to come see you perform. And I think for us, a lot of those earlier days, and for me being a high school kid coming into bars, the biggest thing for me, part of the allure is like I love playing music, but this was like a brand new world of, bacchanalian world where I could just, have at it, drinking and doing whatever else was going on at the time. And I think at this point once we got signed to Atlantic, we started taking like our performance and how we played more seriously. So we would come off stage and, it's like it wasn't just like high fives. Oh, that was awesome. We'd be like right away, we'd start dissecting the show. All right, that tune didn't work with that one. We need to do a different transition. You guys got to play longer here. And so I think we started to become professional at that time where we took it in a completely different light. So, and I think you see that from that first album to the second album, and then things that we still even carry over now. I mean, we're still a bunch of goofy college kids, high school kids that got together, but we take what we do seriously because the fact that so many people respect us, we want to make sure that we're respecting, the music and the art form and the performances. So we're always going to step up our game and try to do something better than last time.
Well, and that answers the question because, I mean, there has to be something that at a point that amplifies your performance that you realize that, all right, so, we've been kind of chugging along at our own pace here and we've been putting on a good show every night, but then you surround yourself with bands that are doing the exact same thing. It has to be kind of a comforting feeling because, you've got talent before, talent after, or whatever, wherever you fit in the lineup. Just was curious as to how that changed your set. And did that affect your songwriting? At the point when you saw, the samples they're a jam band. I mean, they'll play what the Silver Ring. I mean, it used to be one of my favorite live at the Red Rocks with the samples of like my college jam. But they'll play a song for 20 minutes. I mean, and then you've got Jars of Clay, which is pretty straightforward. They play the same stuff every night, but they're a very good band. I mean, how do bands like that kind of influence what you're moving forward, or do they not really at all?
At that level, all of a sudden you're like, man, you're overly impressed with the quality of what's going on. And you're like, during sound check going like, shit, man, they're really good. And it's just like, you start getting a little bit like, we got to be as good as those guys. And like Dan said, we're not like the greatest musicians. We're all really good musicians, but it's not like you're going to hire us to go be studio guys on your record. What makes us good is that we know how to be great together. And that's what a band's all about. We know how to play. And then, that just got better as time went on, as we started taking things more seriously, as we started hearing bands and being impressed by what they were doing. You just try to be even better. And when we get into Holiday From You, that's when we really, I think, learned how to be a great band together because we got schooled by Arlen Lanny, who produced the record, as far as how to pulse and move together and how to serve a song. So,
yeah. And to go back to that, I remember there's a handful of bands always, every time we would play, whether it was a Minneapolis show or something, I remember the first time we played with, the Freddie Jones band, and you're just blown away by the musicality and the technical ability that these guys have. But I remember the first time that we played with the Verve Pipe and just literally watching that. I think they opened for us, if I'm not mistaken. And I just remember watching their set and said, oh my God, these guys rock. And I'm like, I want to rock too. And I think a lot of that also inspired the next batch of songs because we ended up writing a lot of music on the road. And a lot of music is written during sound check. You're waiting for somebody, somebody's on the phone, somebody's eating, somebody's sleeping. So 2 or 3 of you are on stage.
Usually it was Morgan on the payphone.
Morgan's on the payphone. Godot sitting there talking to the young ladies.
On the brick.
On the brick. But, we were definitely motivated. I remember like seeing a handful of bands. I remember there was that one band, Balloon Guy. I can't remember if they were from Kansas City and they're a little bit more punk and edgy. And you'd always be inspired by these bands, like everything that we played with.
Those guys.
And yeah, they had and everybody was coming up at the same time too. So we ended up playing a bunch of shows with Verve Pipe, and then they ended up getting signed before us. And then we went from them opening for us to us opening up for them. So you're always inspired. And then there's definitely this desire to be as good, if not better, than the other band. if you're opening up for somebody, you want to throw it all out there so that the band that comes on after you isn't as good as you. So there's always a little bit of that alpha male pride for each band, and lots of ego going on as well. So,
and a lot of camaraderie. Like all the bands, everybody's, loving and hugging up on each other and just like congrats and you guys rocked. And it was a cool time, to be touring and to be playing with bands that were kind of on the rise. And there's a lot of love. So
let's talk about Shirley. We brought this up briefly in the last episode. So Shirley, I'm assuming, is now coming into play at this point, correct?
well, let's see. So it's
let's
95.
definitely, because we got our advance from Atlantic in 95 and went back to Smart Studios to record some more songs. And then didn't we buy Shirley in Madison?
Yeah. We actually bought the red van and the gray trailer in Madison. So we ended up getting into the advance from Atlantic, and then I can't remember who went with me. I don't know if it was Morgan or somebody else, but we went out and picked out a van, picked out a trailer, and that's how we took Shirley home.
But Shirley was like styling.
Oh yeah,
She had stripes. She had
reclining seats
in the back.
4 captain's chairs and a bed in the back.
Yeah, the bed in the back. Like, she got us to many places safely. You know what we ended up doing? We got her. We were so excited. But we would be in Smart Studios recording. And at that time, you finish a song and it's ready to be, you want to put the final stamp on it. You make a tape or you make a CD and you run down to the car. It's gotta pass the car speaker test. So we would jump in the car with Brian Anderson, the producer, and Shirley, we'd pop in the CD and listen to the track and make mental notes. Because back then it's like it's got to sound good on that type of medium. Now it's like things have to sound good on your iPhone because most people just listen to things off of their phone. But it was awesome. It was like when we got her, it was a huge step up from a beige cargo van that had old rundown couches in it with no seat belts, no heat. So we felt like we were styling. And then we pull in, we got a gray trailer to match the gray stripes, the pinstripes along Shirley's body. She was beautiful. And then we got really big like wheels. So it's like just I think they were 22s. So and it was kind of funny. We would take turns driving. But I'll tell you, everybody was always concerned when I was driving.
Could that be because you weren't really a good driver?
No, I'm a great driver, but I was
same shit
up most of the time.
So we went back into the studio to re-record parts of Collide and cut some new tracks. And at the same time, Butch Vig's new band Garbage was working in the studio below. So we were upstairs tracking and redoing a couple things, and Garbage was downstairs. And so we had the opportunity to actually meet them as they were just starting out. And I actually remember while we were recording the album, they actually booked their first show at Shank Hall. And we drove back to Milwaukee and saw Garbage, their first ever show at Shank Hall. And it was crazy to just see this band that became like just this epic rock god band and had just such a pedigree with Butch Vig and, the entire crew, Shirley Manson. I can't remember. Can't remember the other guys' names, but we ended up befriending them in the studio and getting to know them. And so we ended up, out of respect for Shirley Manson, naming the van, because she's Scottish. She had red hair, and we had this beautiful red van that Goran was very enamored with. We named the van Shirley. And then the interesting thing was that I actually, as we're staying in Madison, we were staying at some hotel out on State Street, and we had there's always a lot of downtime, so you're looking for something to do. So I remember one day wandering down State Street and going to the theater, and at the time Get Shorty just came out. And so I went out to the theater. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just go catch this movie. This seems pretty cool, sort of like in the vein of Reservoir Dogs and sort of the Quentin Tarantino just sort of coming out party type of thing. So Get Shorty looked pretty cool. And so I ran into Shirley Manson, and I think it was Duke and his girlfriend or wife at the time. And she saw me, and she's a very just bewitching human being. She's got this thick Scottish accent and this incredible confidence about her. And so she actually saw me. She's like, "Oh, Dan, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just coming down to see Get Shorty." She's like, "Well, come on in." She grabs me by the arm, and we ended up going in and watching the movie together with Duke and his girlfriend. So it was funny at the time. And so then we ended up, I think out of respect for her and everything, we ended up naming the band Shirley. So it was kind of a funny thing. Every time everybody's like, "Where'd you get the name from?" And we just, comical little aside. But
I forgot that they were in the studio. We actually got to know them. And the first show that they did at Shank Hall, I don't know if you remember, 20, 30 seconds in, all of their technology, because there were a lot of loops and a lot of whatever. It's their first show. It's a big deal. It's Butch Vig's new project. And she's, like Dan said, she just was like, she walks in a room and you're just like, oh my gosh, she's just amazing. She just had this energy and beauty about her and confidence. And they walk on stage and the Shank Hall is packed, and everybody's wondering, nobody knows the album yet. Like, they're just there to showcase the band, and within 20, 30 seconds, it's like the music starts and it just everything just stops. Like, all the technology just went.
She was what Courtney Love wanted to be. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And they were phenomenal. I mean, it's like, and that was the thing too, because it was interesting at that time. They were really pushing boundaries in terms of having all those loops and all those effects. If you listen to that first Garbage album. And so I remember being there and, and having conversations with them in studio leading up to, and there was a really big apprehension about what they were doing in the studio. How do we translate it live? Because the technology back then isn't like the technology that we have now. And even as we utilized those type of things over the years, it's gotten so much easier now. But back then there would be times also for us, it's like something would go out and you're like, you just lift your hands up. You're like, fuck, all right. You walk off stage and you hope your tech and your sound guy could figure it out. And then, but it was sort of like an epic thing. But then afterwards, when they came back and they kicked in that first tune, everybody, I think, in Shank Hall was just blown away because sonically it was nothing you heard before. And you're going, holy shit.
Yeah, it still is when you listen to
Oh, absolutely.
Stuff. Very, very cool. That's a great story. Yeah, I never known. Goran texted me that, hey, make sure to bring up Shirley. And I kind of skipped that last episode because I think you said that it was this, Dan said that it was later on. So it's good to know the story. It's kind of like the key lime pie story. So we're getting a lot of behind the scenes stuff here.
Yeah, that's a true story. About the key lime pie.
Or the Shirley story.
And to this day, we don't play a show unless there's 3 key lime pies in our dressing room.
That's on your rider?
Oh, God, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. What else is on the Gufs rider these days?
Green M&Ms that go with the key lime pie.
I'm taking notes.
I don't know. I think now we've simplified. I think there's like a bottle of bourbon, bottle of Jameson's, bottle of vodka.
We definitely simplified. Back in the day, you're like, what? You get to pick what you want, and then
so what you picked. I mean, it's a good transition. So I mean, when you were touring in these shows with Atlantic, I mean, what was on your rider?
I think what was on your rider and what you ended up getting when you got there were two different things.
All right. So what you asked for versus what you got.
Yeah, the best was the old looking meat and cheese platter with
the deli tray.
Yeah, the deli tray. There you go. And we would never, you don't want to go on stage like all full. So you usually just dig into it afterwards. And after a show, when the show's done and you're feeling good about what happened and you realize that you haven't eaten in 14 hours, that deli tray was like eating a fillet.
4 hours old and still good.
But at that point, the crew has devastated that deli tray. So we would go into a place, and the first thing you'd always get is like there's always the initial cooler of beer, no matter if it was a dive bar or an amphitheater. The cooler of beer was always there first. So you're drinking beer when you're getting there. The band wouldn't eat before the show, but the crew would just go to town, and then we would get back after the show, and we'd be like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, God damn it, Tony, Bijou, Pivo, what the fuck?" You know, we're starving, you know, and all of a sudden we get back there, there's just like 3 pieces of cheese and like a little bit of lettuce left, you know.
And some old, stale-looking cauliflower.
Slightly brown, a little beige.
Still tasty.
It was still tasty.
It was delicious. I remember we would split that final piece of cauliflower or broccoli just amongst the 4 of us.
I mean, wouldn't you like hold it up like in your hand like this, Gordon, and all 4 of us would just come around and just nibble on the edges?
Take it from the cup. Oh, goodness. Well, I think we've worked ourselves into a great transition for the next episode. So a lot to build on. Goran, you still want to play Smile for us tonight?
I figure Smile, you know, is a song that I'm thankful for, so I will never get sick of playing it. So
before you guys wrecked it or after?
Or after you wrecked it.
I mean, I can't remember what it was like before we wrecked it because Goran came with like the precursor of Crash. Actually, the session that he came to us with Listen to the Trees and Smile, and they were both ballads. Like, hey, I wrote this new song, check this out. It's really mellow. And I'm just like, at this point, this is like 94. I'm like, dude, I'm so fucking sick of this, man. I go, honestly. And then we started hammering out on on Smile. So we got that, like the bones out on that. And then I remember like talking to like, you know, when we did Listen to the Trees, I'm like, no, man, it needs some big, just jungle rhythm drums going on it. And so
we were in at that time we were at Brian Pettit's loft, which was down on the west side of Chicago, and he had this cool loft that was where he did a lot of his artwork. Brian was a art student at the
Art Institute of Chicago.
Yeah.
Or was it the
School of the Art, whatever they call it. So he was just a massive creative. So he had this huge loft space and we would practice there. And I remember we would set up and, you know, record and write and practice. And I brought Smile to them and it was like, it's a cool song. It's got a great melody. And then all of a sudden, Scott and Dan and Brian just take off with this rhythm. And I was like, okay, how do we play these chords over that? And it was like, as soon as we started it just was like, as a writer, I was like, okay, this is way, way better than whatever I intended. So I knew immediately that we were onto something cool. We just didn't know that we were onto something as cool as what everybody else.
Well, however you want to play it. I mean, you guys.
Yeah, I'll play it kind of the way that everybody wants to hear it. So give me a minute. I cannot control the way I feel. She said, won't you play with something real? other boys, always watching, never wanting more. I cannot control the things I do. She said, won't you come? I wanted to. Taken to another place and time. Never felt this good or been so high. Is it any wonder what I'll be doing here? You cannot control this anymore, my dear. Is it any wonder what I'll be doing now? You cannot control it more. Tried to live without you for a while. I can now control you with a smile. I tried to live my life just for a while. I can now control you with a smile. I cannot control the way you feel. She said all of this was never real. I'm no different than the other boys. I will leave you never wanting more. Is it any wonder what I'll be doing here? You cannot control this anymore, my dear. And is it any wonder what I'll be doing now? You cannot control me more. Tried to live without you for a while. I can now control you with a smile. I tried to live my life just for a while. And I can now control you with a smile. I tried to live my life just for a while. I tried to live without you for a while. I tried to live my life just for a while. Tried to live without you for a while. I can now control you with a smile. I try to live my life just for a while. And I can now control you with a smile. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo.
That song's not the same without one of the greatest leads ever written by a guitar player, Morgan Dollar.
Well, we should figure out how to do that next time.
You know, I still think about that song and I'm like, I still don't know, where it came from, what it really means. And I'm thankful for it because it kind of helped us get to a level that we never thought or dreamed could happen. So, and it was kind of quick. That song came out really quick, and some of the best ones always happen real fast. So,
Well, you've been rather successful at it, I would say. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Dan?
Yeah, I mean I think that song, I think that and Crash opened, the biggest door we could walk through as far as a band. So I mean, you got to be thankful for it. It came out of sort of nowhere, and we sort of just did what we did with it, and then it somehow resonated with people. And yeah, I remember writing the lyrics. Gordy and I working on the lyrics for that tune and for Crash over at Smart Studios and stuff. And you're always looking for a little inspiration, guidance, and I think back then in terms of songwriting, we weren't so much storytellers as much as we were creating like a vibe or a feel or an emotion. I think we were just very emotive back then. And so I mean, without that song and without Crash, I mean, it's like we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. So you've got to appreciate where you've been and what you've done, and however it came about. It's worked its way out for on its own. So I'm thankful for that, and I think everybody in the band is. We're incredibly grateful for the fact that these songs came out the way they did and had the impact that they did, because if without these two tunes and Smile in particular, we wouldn't be here 30 plus years later chatting with you.
and being the lead singer, I usually like to make sure that I end every show with something as amazing as what he just said.
Well,
I'm gonna actually.
I'll let you do that.
I'm actually going to choose to be silent because what Dejan just said was absolutely amazing, and I'm pissed that I didn't say it.
I'll give you one more chance, Goran. I got one more question, and I'm going to let you guys off the hook.
Okay.
Can we expect to see the Gufs perform anytime, I suppose, after COVID is said and done? Can we expect to see the Gufs perform together anytime in the exponential future?
I refuse to share the stage with this man. He's too demanding. Never again. I'm done.
Here's your chance to end it, Goran.
Tune your bass.
No, it's like, hey, can you turn that down a little bit, man?
I usually always have two requests for Dan. You're really loud. Turn it down. You're killing me. And tune your bass. Tune your bass. I don't see us playing until this craziness goes away. And as soon as it goes away, we will put on a killer show. And hopefully by that time, we'll have a new album.
All right. Good deal.
We've been working on new stuff, and it's been fun.
So there's hope.
There's always hope.
Always.
Always hope. Well, again, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate your time. And sorry I cut your epic ending out, Dan. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to get my last question. I know we're running along here, but thank you again both tonight. And we look forward to having you guys on the next episode. Any last parting words?
Next week will be cool because Holiday from You, that's where the shit really happens.
Great.
I'm being serious. I actually want to tune in myself for that show.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining. And we will see you on the next episode, which will be Holiday from You. Take care.